Vigilantes continue to carry out executions of people that they suspect to be drug dealers and lawbreakers. And part of the problem is the new leader of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, is very much in favor of that type of behavior. In fact, recently he made some questionable statements about how he himself went after people and killed them without any type of trial or any type of investigation, just because he merely suspected them of being involved in criminal behavior. Now, he said the following: "In Davao, I used to do it personally, just to show to the guys, police, that if I can do it, why can't you? And I'd go around in Davao with a motorcycle, with a big bike around, and I would just patrol the streets, looking for trouble also. I was really looking for a confrontation so I could kill." By the way,
wow,
this is his statement. I am quoting him.
I've never heard a leader talk like that, because other leaders are savvy enough not to want to go in front of the International Criminal Court and get prosecuted one day, or to have a new leader of the country come in and go, yeah, you admitted to murder, I have to do something about it. And isn't it funny how it's always the guys who are claiming that they're in favor of rule of law that then brag about breaking the law? So you're not supposed to summarily execute people. You're in the Philippines, like in almost all other countries, you're supposed to arrest them, bring them to jail, bring them to court, bring them to justice, etc.
And the reason why you do that is because you can't just go around killing people that you suspect of breaking the law. You need to go through a trial, provide evidence, and make sure that you prove that that person is guilty before any form of justice is actually carried out, right? Or any sentence is carried out. You can't just willy-nilly go around shooting people that you suspect of doing anything wrong.
And this one's even slightly worse, because he said he was looking forward to confrontation so he could kill people.
It's insane. It's insane. Now, in 2015, he admitted killing at least 3 men suspected of kidnapping and rape in Davao. Anyway, again, look, those are terrible crimes, and anyone who commits those crimes should be brought to justice. But again, you don't know for sure whether or not someone has done it if they're just accused of doing it. You need to investigate it. This is crazy. Now, nearly 6,000 people are said to have been killed by police, vigilantes, and mercenaries since Duterte launched his drug war after being elected in May. Drug war part of this is really important because he is aggressively going after drug traffickers, drug users, and I'm sorry, I just disagree that drugs ever warrant, the death penalty.
Yeah.
Unless you're killing people while you're trafficking drugs, and even then, you need to bring these people to court, and they need to face trial so you can prove that they're guilty.
But again, as with always with Duterte, it's even worse than that. Because he's not talking about killing drug dealers. He's talking about killing people who use drugs. So let me read you the last quote here. He said, "Hitler massacred 3 million Jews." Actually, it was higher than that. "There's 3 million drug addicts. I'd be happy to slaughter them." Happy to slaughter 3 million people using drugs, not dealing drugs.
So think about that in our context, where we're dealing with a huge heroin epidemic. And these are people who got addicted to heroin because they were prescribed painkillers after they were injured or after they had surgery. They're not bad people, right? They happen to get addicted to a highly addictive drug that they were prescribed by their doctors. And so what do? Do we just run around and murder them? Do we slaughter them? Is that the way you treat people who are addicted to drugs? This is a bad, bad guy. And I think that he is symbolic of what's happening throughout the world right now. There's this weird, super conservative streak, and I don't know. I don't know why anyone would vote this kind of person into office.
No, I do, and I don't think it's a super conservative streak, honestly. I think it's a populist streak, and populism can go very right when it leads to people like FDR and actually changing the system to benefit the middle class, as he did here in America, or populism can go really wrong when it goes right wing. And it is the whole world saying to the IMFs, and I'm just keeping it real here, and IMF does some good things, some bad things, it's a complicated situation, World Monetary Fund, et cetera, but there is this system that is put into place, and you must follow these rules, and somehow all the money winds up at the top, and all the injustice and poverty, et cetera, winds up for the great majority of people across the world. So then they get more and more frustrated. And in that frustration, what do? They're going to go either populist left or they're going to go populist right. And by the way, when they go populist left, they're crushed even more because that's when they might actually try to protect the money of their people, in which case the global interests go, no, 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 no. That's a real danger. You get a right-wing dictator and they're like, oh, you're just killing people. Do I still get to keep my money? Okay, great. You do whatever you want. So it's scapegoating. You think the real problem in the Philippines as to why there's poverty and injustice is because of drug users? Of course not. What's he doing? He's getting you to redirect your frustration and anger towards the most powerless people in the country, not towards the people who screwed you over in the first place, who are the most powerful people in the country. And you might think, well, this Duterte talks a big game, and like other people we know in other countries, is constantly contradicting himself. He recently said, I'm not a killer. When he was getting the Outstanding Filipino Award in 2016, you might want to rethink the name of that award, or at least he was giving a speech at that ceremony. But no, there are witnesses. There's a former self-confessed member of a death squad who said that he saw him while he was Davao mayor shoot a Justice Department agent. Not a drug dealer, not a drug user, a Justice Department agent with an Uzi, and just murdered him right there on the spot. And this guy's in charge of a country. One last thing. If you're the Philippines or other places like this, look, you're telling the rest of the world, don't come to our country. So among all the other damaging parts of this, it's most damaging to the people who live in the Philippines. But it's also going to affect your tourism and your economy, et cetera.
100%.
I'm not going to go to Philippines. There's no rule of law there. It's lawlessness. It's chaos. It's just a guy who decides who lives and who dies. You want to go to a country like that? And don't get me wrong, I'm not judging the Philippines. They're not the only place that suffers from this. I'm certainly not going to a lot of the Gulf countries that are ruled in the same way. But today I was reconsidering ever going to Milwaukee. There's a guy named Sheriff David Clark who's a madman who doesn't believe in the rule of law here in America. And people are dying in his prisons left and right because he refuses to give them medical treatment. So that makes me think, well, do I want to go to Milwaukee where I have a madman who's in charge of the police there? Probably not. So it's happening all across the world. When you feel like the system is crushing you, it isn't the powerless that are doing it. It's the powerful that are doing it. Go left, don't go right. When you go right, all you get is more death and more systematic injustice. Podcast the whole 2-hour Young Turks every single day, commercial free. All-Star Tuesdays, aggressive progressives, old school, post games, TYT classics. You get it all with membership. Do it now. tytnetwork.com/join.